Hello everyone, this is the show that I have been waiting to debut since I started doing videos here on YouTube. This is called Fantasy Overtime, where I go over what's happening from last week in terms of stats and fantasy NBA players you should be looking at, and also who you don't want to be playing next week, as well as guys you should just stay away from in general. But let's go ahead and get started now. So first up here on my Fantasy Overtime show, we have your star opening week sleepers, guys that you will be adding that not necessarily everybody owns in fantasy basketball. So starting out, we have Marvin Williams of the Charlotte Hornets. He plays a small forward position. This past week, the opening week of the NBA season, he played against Minnesota and Atlanta twice. In two of those games, he had double-doubles. In Minnesota, he had 10 points, 3 assists, 10 rebounds, 40% field goal shooting, and 1 block. At Atlanta, 13 points, 3 assists, 12 rebounds, 45% field goal percentage, and made 3 three-pointers. And then playing Atlanta at home, he had 15 points, 1 assist, 5 rebounds, 3 blocks, 50% field goal percentage, and made 5 three-pointers, which is a pretty big deal. He's filling a bunch of stats for you. Definitely look out for this guy. He is only owned by 33% of teams in ESPN.com's NBA Fantasy Basketball, so keep an eye on him going forward. Now, this is only 33% from the time that I wrote these stats down, which was a couple of days ago. So he may be owned a bit more, but definitely keep an eye out on him going forward, especially with the injury to a couple of different Hornets players. Also, another guy you should be looking at, Al-Farouq Aminu for Portland, small forward and power forward position for you in your fantasy lineups. This particular week this past week he played New Orleans, Phoenix, and Phoenix again. The New Orleans game, he had 9 points, 8 rebounds, 1 steal, 2 blocks, filling a lot of stats, 42% field goal percentage, shot 100% from the free throw line, and made a three-pointer. At Phoenix, he had 16 points, 10 rebounds, 2 blocks, 55% of field goal percentage, 80% free throw percentage, and 2 three-pointers made. When they played home against Phoenix, he had 16 points, 7 rebounds, 5 assists, 35% field goal percentage, 100% free throw percentage, and made 2 more three-pointers. Now, expect Aminu to continue having some higher numbers. He is a guy recently that has been given pretty much the green light outside of CJ McCollum and Damian Lillard specifically by Coach Stotts to shoot all he wants, at least in the flow of the offense. So definitely keep an eye on him. He's going to be a guy who's going to give you double-digit points and, be in the upwards of 5 to 10 rebounds a game in that range. Also, he generally is a pretty decent free throw shooter and will get you a three-pointer here and there as well. He's currently owned by 55% of teams on ESPN.com as the time I did this stat writing down. So definitely check him out. Also, another guy you should keep an eye on in your leagues, Willie Cauley-Stein for Sacramento. I honestly didn't think I'd be saying this. He's playing center and power forward for the Kings this year. I wasn't 100% sure if he was going to get any playing time whatsoever, but with DeMarcus Cousins getting hurt recently and a few other moves, he's really starting to get the feel for the NBA game. And seems to be relatively efficient too. Now in the first game he played against the LA Clippers. He only got about 8 minutes of game time. Had 2 points, 2 rebounds, 50% field goal percentage. Nothing crazy. But however, in the Lakers game, he had a breakout game with 17 points, 9 rebounds, an assist, a steal, and 3 blocks, which is kind of closer to the upper echelon of fantasy centers that you can pick up at this moment that are already drafted when you got into your league. So definitely check that out. He had an 87% field goal percentage, shooting 7 of 8 from the field. And he also had a 60% free throw percentage. That isn't great, but it's on the positive side of 50, so that'll hopefully push your free throw percentages up a little bit for your weekly games. And then when they played at the Clippers, again, he had 8 points, 9 rebounds, 3 steals, a block, 60% field goal percentage. But in this game, he was more hovering around the 50% free throws. We would like to see him push up his free throw percentage. However, he is filling some needed stats at the center position. And depending on how long DeMarcus is out, he is a guy who's really going to fill that role, especially the fact that Sacramento has Carl. Well, I don't know if Sacramento still has Carl Landry anymore. Whatever. I would probably need to look that up. But anyway, he is a guy that right now is filling in a big spot for the Sacramento Kings in the post, especially since they got rid of people like Jason Thompson and such. So look out for him, and especially with the way George Karl has been coaching the team, he's probably going to continue to have this small uprise. Now, later in the season, you may want to consider dropping him for somebody else, just because, rookies always find a spot to hit the wall during the season. But right now, he is looking like a good fantasy option to fill in and help you get through the first couple weeks. All right, so to my next segment here. My I hope I don't have to face him this week player. It's really kind of obvious. It's Steph Curry. He averaged in 3 games 39.3 points per game, 7.3 assists, 5.6 rebounds, 2.3 steals, 58.8 field goal percentage as a jump shooter, and 95% free throw percentage. And he was also averaging about 5.6 three-pointers per game, which, if you're having to go up against that, you are going to single-handedly lose at least 2 categories against your opponent. And for one player to individually do that is a royal pain in NBA fantasy. So definitely, if you're facing this guy, I wish you luck. But anyway, going into our next category here, and segment of my Fantasy Overtime show, my Oy Vey of the week. This is what I call my star player who's not playing well, basically, or just a guy who is normally a huge fantasy option and just isn't doing anything for you. This week, our Oy Vey of the week is James Harden of the Houston Rockets, and he fills the shooting guard position for your NBA fantasy squads. In 3 games played, he averaged 18 points per game, 6 assists, 6.3 rebounds. However, he's shooting 22% field goal percent, 22% from the field, excuse my talking, and 87% free throws, and he's only made 3 threes in 3 games. He really has been underperforming for a Houston team that hasn't been playing well. Is he still cursed? I don't know. But anyway, this has been my Fantasy Overtime show. You will start seeing this weekly with, like I said, the sleepers, the guy you don't want to play next week, and the guy you hope you play next week in my Oy Vey of the week. Give it a like. Go ahead, follow us here at The Analyst 32, and you can follow me on Twitter at The Analyst 32 as well. And we shall see you next week, and happy hunting.